Now, the US Treasury Secretary says the White House is going to focus on what he is calling, or Scott Bessent's calling, the dirty 15% of countries with the largest trade barriers, the biggest deficits in many ways. And so here we go. The US ran the biggest deficits in goods last year with the countries on this map. These would be in the 15%. Let's start, for example, with China. Now there, you have a deficit of nearly 300 billion. And the United States says the Chinese firms benefit from state investment and flood the export market. So you're really talking, you're talking here about not so much nominal tariffs, but tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. And that's also the case with Mexico. Remember, you've got the USMCA between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. If you look here, you have a deficit of $171 billion. But here's where it gets interesting, because obviously lower cost production in Mexico, foreign companies deliberately went to Mexico to access the US market under the USMCA. And who negotiated the USMCA? President Trump in his first administration. On the other side of the world, once again, you go back this time to Vietnam, because this is an interesting one. 123 billion is the bilateral deficit. And companies moved to Vietnam. Why? To avoid China. Because avoiding China, when the US was having tariff wars with China back in the first Trump administration, you went to Vietnam. By the way, you also went to Cambodia and a whole lot of other places. Mohamed El-Erian joins me now, the president of Queen's College at the University of Cambridge. Good to see you, Mohamed, as always. Now, look, I've got my charts and my maps here, but the reality is staying one step ahead of tariffs is almost impossible, because you don't know. I mean, you're talking about very long lead times for factories.
That's correct. And that's why quite a few CEOs say, just tell me what the tariff regime is going to be like, and then let me adapt. You have three sets of distinct tariffs. You have reciprocal tariffs. That's what you talked about. We will treat them as they treat us. Then you have a second set of sectoral tariff. And you heard the president talk about pharmaceuticals, aluminum. Then you have a third set of tariffs, and those are sanction-like tariffs. And today we had quite a change in those, because we had the equivalent of secondary tariffs. So it is, I'll give you the image, for business, it is like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's just very hard to internalize all this information coming at you.
Everyone, on this question of using of tariffs, neither of us, I don't think, and you'll accept maybe the first Trump administration, but I'm guessing neither of us can remember a time when tariffs has been quite simply the core economic industrial policy du jour.
I certainly don't. It was a long, long time ago, in the 30s, but we haven't had it recently, and for good reason. It is, once you let that genie out of the bottle, it is very difficult to get that genie back into the bottle, because you don't only get the US imposing tariffs on others, you get others imposing tariffs on you, and then you get this whole third thing. Well, if you trade with Venezuela, you'll be subject to an additional 25%. So it looks like a spaghetti pole at the end of this, and right. It's very difficult to figure it out.
Now, as related to this question is, I mean, it's one thing to have the tariff policy. It's quite another to have it changing so rapidly in every different direction at the whim of what the president says. For example, today, widespread tariffs on April the 2nd, but the president said that the tariffs are coming in very near future, is what he said. Very near future. That's worth the bell. Hours later, he says, I may give a lot of countries breaks. And hours after that, he says, we might be even nicer than that. It's hard to, obviously, the back and forth, but the stock market doesn't, it's almost like they're now discounting all of these comments. What's your view?
I think you're right. Initially, and look at what's happened the last 6 weeks, the markets took it very seriously. And the result of that was a correction, a 10% decline in the S&P, and an even bigger decline in the NASDAQ. More recently, example today, the markets are saying, no, on balance, I like what I'm hearing, even though there's a lot of uncertainty, but I've realized this uncertainty is not a bug, it's a feature of how I'm going to have to operate. And on balance, I think today was better news.
Is this proof that, to some extent, all the talk about the president being worried about the stock market isn't necessarily relevant because he knows at a whim's moment he can switch it on? I mean, if things got desperate, all he has to do is start saying, I've revised my tariff thinking, and the market would rally several thousand points.
It would, with one important qualification, Richard. There's been a lot of money that's been taken out of the US market into Europe because people are excited, in my view, overexcited about what's happening in Germany. So yes, he could bring the value back up, but the issue is the flows. And reversing some of these longer term allocations away from the US and to Europe, that doesn't happen quickly.
You're a tease, Mohamed, because you just gently let on that you think that this Germany thing might be a bit overdone. Everybody's off to the races on the idea of huge defense spending in Europe. Now, there is going to be a lot more money spent, but you're giving us a bit of a caveat. What is it?
I am. It's defense, it's infrastructure, it is spending on Europe, by Europe, and all three take time. The market is reacting as if they're going to happen very quickly and easily. I doubt that's going to be the case. They will happen, but they're going to take quite a bit of time.
When you're advising people and you're advising, large investors, the wish is always to have the result yesterday, isn't it? I mean, you wish you did it yesterday and you want it, and tomorrow might even be too late. It's quite difficult to to balance that short-term prognosis with longer-term goals.
It is, but the questions that I'm being asked today is very different than before. The question today is, if I end up making a mistake, look, I don't want to make a mistake, but the world is really uncertain. But if I end up making a mistake, what's the most recoverable mistake? It is not go out and invest in something that will take you 5 years, just wait. So the wait and see attitude among companies is quite pronounced, Richard.
That's fascinating. The irrecoverable mistake that you told us, which, by the way, has become the mantra now here on Crespin's Business. Good to see you, Mohamed, as always. Thank you for taking time and joining us.